What happens when Hollywood's most beloved rebel sits across from late-night television's most notorious provocateur? You won't believe what unfolds when Johnny Depp steps onto Jimmy Kimmel's stage, expecting a routine promotional interview, only to find himself walking into an ambush that would leave audiences speechless and social media in complete meltdown. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two titans clash in what might be the most explosive late-night television moment ever captured on camera. The Hollywood Reporter called it television's most uncomfortable 12 minutes. And after you hear what really went down last night, you'll understand why Jimmy Kimmel's show is now facing its biggest crisis in years. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a masterclass in how a host can completely destroy his own credibility in front of millions of viewers. The tension was palpable from the moment Johnny Depp walked onto that familiar Hollywood Boulevard set. What should have been a standard promotional appearance for his latest film quickly transformed into something far more sinister. Kimmel, known for his cutting remarks and controversial takes, seemed determined to push boundaries that should never have been crossed. "Johnny Depp, everybody," Kimmel announced with his trademark grin. But there was something different in his eyes tonight, something calculating. The audience erupted in their usual applause, completely unaware they were about to witness television history in the making. Depp settled into the guest chair with his characteristic laid-back demeanor, adjusting his signature rings and offering a polite smile to the crowd. He'd done hundreds of these interviews over his decades-long career, but nothing could have prepared him for what Kimmel had planned. "So Johnny," Kimmel began, leaning forward with an intensity that immediately shifted the room's energy, "let's talk about your recent legal battles. Our audience is dying to know. How does it feel to have your dirty laundry aired out for the entire world to see?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Depp's smile faltered slightly, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. This wasn't the agreed-upon topic list. This wasn't what his publicist had cleared. This was an ambush. "Well, Jimmy," Depp responded carefully, his voice maintaining its familiar rasp but carrying a new edge. "I thought we were here to discuss my film work, not to rehash personal matters that have already been resolved through proper legal channels." But Kimmel wasn't backing down. If anything, he seemed energized by Depp's obvious discomfort. "Come on, Johnny. You can't expect to just sweep everything under the rug. Our viewers deserve honesty. They deserve to know who they're really supporting when they buy movie tickets." The audience began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the lighthearted banter they'd come to expect from Kimmel's show. This felt different, invasive, wrong. Depp's publicist, sitting in the wings, frantically tried to catch the attention of the show's producers. But Kimmel was in full control now, wielding his position of power like a weapon against his increasingly uncomfortable guest. "You know what, Jimmy?" Depp's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, his eyes narrowing as he leaned forward in his chair. "I came here in good faith to promote my work, to give your audience something entertaining. But it seems you have a different agenda entirely." The veteran actor's fingers drummed against his knee, a telltale sign that those who knew him recognized as barely contained frustration. His usual playful demeanor was rapidly giving way to something much more volatile. Kimmel pressed on, seemingly oblivious to the growing tension. "I'm just asking the questions our audience wants answered. Isn't that what good journalism is about? Holding celebrities accountable?" "Journalism?" Depp's laugh was hollow, devoid of any warmth. "Is that what you're calling this ambush? Because last I checked, journalists operated with something called integrity." The insult hit its mark. Kimmel's face flushed red, his carefully maintained television persona beginning to crack. "Integrity? That's rich, coming from someone whose personal life reads like a tabloid headline." The studio fell silent except for the low hum of cameras still rolling. Even the usually vocal audience seemed to sense they were witnessing something that had crossed a line. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was personal warfare being broadcast live to millions. Depp stood slowly from his chair, his movements deliberate and controlled, despite the fury building behind his eyes. You know what your problem is, Jimmy? You mistake cruelty for comedy. You think tearing people down makes you somehow bigger, more important. Sit down, Johnny, Kimmel commanded, but his voice cracked slightly. The power dynamic in the room was shifting and everyone could feel it. No, I don't think I will, Depp replied, his voice gaining strength with each word. I've sat through enough of your pathetic attempts at humiliation disguised as entertainment. The confrontation was reaching a boiling point, with neither man willing to back down. What had started as an uncomfortable interview was rapidly spiraling into something much more dangerous, and the cameras were capturing every explosive second. Kimmel's producers were now frantically signaling from behind the cameras, desperately trying to regain control of a situation that had spiraled completely out of their hands. But their host was too deep in the confrontation to notice, his ego driving him forward like a runaway train heading straight for disaster. You think you can just waltz in here and dictate how this interview goes? Kimmel shot back, rising from his own chair to match Depp's stance. This is my show, my stage, and I'll ask whatever questions I damn well please. The audience was dead silent now, the usual energy of a live taping replaced by an uncomfortable tension that seemed to suck all the oxygen from the room. Even the band had stopped their usual between-segment chatter, sensing that something historic was unfolding before their eyes. Depp's voice dropped to a menacing whisper that somehow carried more weight than if he had shouted. Your show? Your stage? Let me tell you something about stages, Jimmy. I've been performing on them longer than you've been relevant, and I know the difference between entertainment and exploitation. Oh, please, Kimmel scoffed, but there was a tremor in his voice that betrayed his growing unease. Don't lecture me about entertainment. At least I don't have to rely on playing the same quirky character in every single movie I make. The personal attack hit like a physical blow. Depp's hands clenched into fists at his sides, his knuckles turning white as he fought to maintain composure. You want to talk about characters, Jimmy? Let's talk about the character you play every night. The lovable everyman who's really just a bully with a network contract. Kimmel's face contorted with rage. At least I show up to work sober and on time. Can you say the same? The low blow landed with devastating effect. The color drained from Depp's face, then returned in a furious flush that spread from his neck to his temples. You son of a... Gentlemen, please. One of the producers finally found his voice, rushing onto the stage with his hands raised in a desperate attempt at damage control. We need to take a commercial break, but both men ignored him completely, locked in a battle of wills that had transcended the boundaries of television professionalism. What's wrong, Johnny? Kimmel taunted, emboldened by what he perceived as victory. Truth hurt too much? Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to make your personal problems everyone else's business. Depp took a step closer, and for a moment, it looked like the confrontation might turn physical. The security team positioned themselves strategically around the stage, ready to intervene if necessary. You want to know what hurts, Jimmy? Depp's voice was barely controlled fury now. What hurts is watching someone with a platform like yours use it to tear people down, instead of building them up. What hurts is seeing you turn human suffering into punchlines for your pathetic monologues. The accusation struck deep. Kimmel's entire career had been built on exactly that foundation, finding humor in others' misfortune, turning celebrity scandals into comedy gold. But hearing it laid bare like this, in front of his audience and cameras, made it sound exactly as ugly as it really was. I'm a comedian, Kimmel protested weakly. It's what I do. People expect better. Depp cut him off, his voice rising for the first time. They expect hosts who can interview guests without resorting to character assassination. They expect someone who can be funny without being cruel. The studio audience began to murmur among themselves, clearly torn between their loyalty to their host and their growing sympathy for his guest. Social media was already exploding with real-time reactions, with "Warn respect Johnny Depp" and "Kimmel crossed the line" trending within minutes. Kimmel could feel the tide turning against him, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "You're one to talk about expectations. How many projects have you torpedoed with your behavior? How many people have had to clean up your messes?" "That's enough," Depp roared, his composure finally shattering completely. "I came here to promote my film, to give your audience something worthwhile, and you turned it into a hit job. You ambushed me with questions you knew weren't on the approved list." "Approved list?" Kimmel laughed bitterly. "Since when do celebrities get to control what questions they're asked? This isn't a press junket. This is live television." "This is a setup," Depp fired back, gesturing toward the cameras that continued rolling. "Despite the chaos, you planned this whole thing, didn't you? You thought you'd get some viral moments at my expense, boost your ratings by humiliating a guest." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Kimmel's silence spoke volumes. He couldn't deny it because it was exactly what he had planned. The pre-interview questions had been carefully crafted to seem innocuous, while his real intentions had been hidden until the cameras were rolling and his guest was trapped. "I thought so," Depp said quietly, reading Kimmel's expression with the skill of someone who had spent decades interpreting human behavior for his craft. "You're not just a bad host, Jimmy. You're a coward." The insult triggered something primal in Kimmel. "Coward? I'm the one asking the hard questions while you hide behind your lawyers and publicists. I'm the one willing to—" But Depp was done, listening. He turned his back on the host and began walking toward the edge of the stage, clearly intending to leave. The audience gasped collectively, sensing that they were about to witness something unprecedented in late-night television history. "Don't you dare walk away from me!" Kimmel shouted, his voice cracking with desperation and fury. "I'm not done talking to you." Depp paused at the edge of the stage, his back still turned to the host. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of Hollywood experience and a lifetime of dealing with people who mistook fame for license to abuse others. "You were done the moment you decided to ambush me instead of conducting a professional interview," Depp said without turning around. "You were done the moment you chose cruelty over comedy." The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the overhead lights. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away from what was clearly becoming a career-defining disaster for their host. Kimmel, realizing he was losing control of everything, made one final, desperate attempt to regain the upper hand. "You know what? Fine. Walk away. That's what you always do when things get tough, isn't it? Run away from responsibility." That stopped Depp cold. He turned slowly, and the look in his eyes was something that made even the security guards take a step back. "Responsibility?" His voice was dangerously quiet again. "Let me tell you about responsibility, Jimmy." He walked back toward center stage, but this time his movement was predatory, purposeful. Responsibility is owning up to your mistakes. Responsibility is treating people with dignity, even when they're vulnerable. Responsibility is using your platform to lift people up, not tear them down for ratings. Kimmel tried to interrupt, but Depp held up a hand that silenced him completely. "I'm talking now. You've had your turn." The audience was riveted. This wasn't just a celebrity meltdown. This was a masterclass in how to handle a bully when cornered. "You want to know about running away from responsibility?" Depp continued, his voice gaining strength with each word. "Running away is hiding behind your writers and producers while you launch personal attacks on your guests. Running away is ambushing someone who came here in good faith, then acting like you're some kind of journalist when you're really just a schoolyard bully with a television show." Kimmel's face was beet red now, his carefully constructed television persona completely shattered. "You can't talk to me like this on my own show." "Watch me," Depp replied coldly. "Because unlike you, I don't need a script to tell the truth." The veteran actor turned to address the audience directly, ignoring Kimmel entirely. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that you had to witness this. You came here expecting entertainment, and instead you got to see what happens when someone mistakes power for permission to be cruel." Several audience members began to applaud, slowly at first, then building to a crescendo that filled the studio. They were applauding not for the spectacle, but for someone finally standing up to behavior they'd all witnessed, but never seen challenged so directly. Kimmel, realizing he was completely losing the crowd, made one last desperate gambit. "Security! Get him off my stage!" But the security team didn't move. They looked uncertainly between their boss and the guest, who had done nothing but defend himself against an unprovoked attack. The moral authority in the room had shifted completely. "That won't be necessary," Depp said, his dignity intact despite everything that had transpired. "I'm leaving voluntarily. But before I go, I want everyone watching to understand something." He looked directly into the main camera, speaking to the millions of viewers at home. "You deserve better than this. You deserve hosts who respect their guests and their audience. You deserve entertainment that doesn't come at the expense of human decency." Kimmel opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He had been completely outmaneuvered, outclassed, and exposed for exactly what he was: a bully who had finally picked on someone who wouldn't be intimidated. "This interview is over," Depp announced, pulling off his wireless microphone and setting it gently on Kimmel's desk. "Not because I'm running away, but because I refuse to participate in whatever this was supposed to be." He turned to leave again, but this time Kimmel didn't try to stop him. The host stood frozen behind his desk, watching his career implode in real time as his guest walked away with his head held high. "Jimmy Kimmel, everyone," Depp said sarcastically as he reached the edge of the stage. "A true professional." The audience erupted in applause again, but this time it was clearly for Depp, not their host. Several people even stood up, giving the departing actor a standing ovation that echoed through the studio. As Depp disappeared into the wings, Kimmel was left alone on his own stage, facing an audience that was looking at him with a mixture of disappointment and disgust. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of his humiliation. "We'll be right back after these messages," Kimmel mumbled weakly, but his voice was barely audible over the continuing applause for his departed guest. Behind the scenes, producers were already in full damage control mode, but they all knew it was too late. The interview had been broadcast live, and social media was exploding with clips and commentary. "Jimmy Kimmel Exposed" was trending worldwide within minutes. The man who had built his career on humiliating others had finally been exposed for what he really was, and it had happened in front of the largest possible audience. Johnny Depp had walked onto that stage as a guest promoting his latest film, but he walked off as something far more powerful: a man who had refused to be bullied and had shown the world exactly what real dignity looked like under pressure. Confrontation was over, but its impact would be felt for years to come.